Today, we're going to be talking about demonstrating the academic and lifelong benefits of Montessori to prospective families. Here at Nido Marketing, our expertise lies in marketing for Montessori schools, and a lot of the challenges that has to do with marketing a Montessori school is explaining to parents and consistently educating them on the benefits of Montessori, what the curriculum is like, and that it is in fact a school, not a daycare. So at today's presentation, we're just really going to explore different ways and strategies that Montessori schools can adapt in order to, just communicate this message properly to parents and make sure that they understand that Montessori classroom curriculum is challenging for children and they will be met with a rigorous and great quality curriculum at our schools. Here's just a brief overview of what we're going to be discussing today. So first, before we get started, in the next slide, I want everyone to kind of share a little bit about themselves so that we can get to know one another. Then I want to talk about, how you can communicate to families that Montessori is not a daycare. It's very much a school and there's curriculum involved and what that curriculum can look like. Setting those expectations from early on. So things like, parent commitments, them understanding that it's a school, they can't just miss, 3 days a week randomly all the time. That this is, there's a structured program here. How you can use content and social proof to communicate your message and market to families the benefits of our curriculum. Also going to talk about how you can communicate curriculum through scope and sequences and ways that families can really understand what their child is taking away and learning. I think this is, it takes a lot of time to put together a scope and sequence, especially if you're covering multiple programs. So we'll share a couple of tips for that and some resources. We'll discuss parent observations as well. This is a huge part of, getting parents to see firsthand what the child is actually learning in the classroom. And that pays off because those are, more committed parents and they can see the value in what we're offering. We'll also talk about meetings. So whenever you have parents who may not understand that much about Montessori yet, you can offer one-on-one meetings and demonstrations. You can do this in a group setting. You could do this one-on-one. We'll talk about transitions as well, because this is usually where we lose parents or they get overwhelmed by, oh, well, I know what's in the traditional school system, but I don't know so much about Montessori. So how we can keep them in our programs during those transitions, or at least ensure them that they will be well prepared for the next chapter, whether that's public school, another Montessori school, or maybe even college if you have adolescent programs. And we'll wrap up with any additional Q&A and discussion. Again, I put Q&A and discussion at the end, but feel free to use the chat or unmute yourself at any point to ask a question or make a comment. So before we get started, I'd love for us to get to know one another. So briefly introduce yourself. You can unmute yourself or you can just type it in the chat. What school you're joining us and why you joined today's call. Are you looking to help families see the value of Montessori education and curriculum? Or, are you dealing with a lot of parents and prospective parents who may not understand your curriculum fully or what the educational value that you're offering yet? See here in the chat. Terry from Mancio Montessori in Geneva, welcome. Trista Coy, welcome back. I know Trista's been at some of our town halls before. Happy to see you back. Julie, welcome. Sarah, hi, I'm Stepping Stones Montessori School in Grand Rapids. Welcome, Sarah. And we have Margaret here from North Shore, Massachusetts. Amazing. Samantha, welcome. Tina, welcome back to our town halls. From Lupine Montessori. Allison from Pincushion Hill Montessori in Ashland, Massachusetts. We have a couple of schools from Massachusetts. Great. Emily from Chicagoland area. Amazing. So we've got quite a sparse group from all over the US. This is great. So hopefully, our different strategies will be helpful. So we're happy to see you all here. Awesome. I see here. Julie says, excited to get a new or review perspective on info for tours and other meetings with parents. Yep. And give parents a better understanding of our curriculum, says Elizabeth from Vanderpool. And Tina says, always looking to refine our communications and help others understand Montessori. Absolutely. So hopefully today's meeting will be helpful. All right, so I think first things first, and this mostly ties in with those of you who have earlier childhood programs, so maybe infant, toddler, or CASA, where parents are really looking for a daycare model sometimes, how we're going to communicate, this is not a daycare, this is a school. It's kind of here I see from Trista, she says, we want to attract the right parent. I'm assuming right parent means a parent that wants a school, not a daycare, or who is really committed to a partnership with you. So I think setting those expectations early on and being very transparent about the programs that you offer and that you are indeed more than, a childcare program or a daycare. You are a school, an educational institution, especially if you have an accreditation. You can also, talk about that, but it's very clear. You have to be very clear from early on what you do. Something great is to offer things like, a breakdown of traditional versus Montessori, what that looks like for each age group as well, because traditional looks different for, a daycare age child, which would usually be, 6 and under, than it would for a public school child. But it's great to have these types of infographics available on your website or on your promotional material that really breaks down, what a parent might expect from traditional. Usually parents already know what to expect from traditional daycares and what they in exchange can expect from a Montessori program. But it's important to communicate this early on so that parents understand, this is a commitment and this is very much a partnership. So there's a couple of ways I'm going to share on how you can educate families about this early on so that you are attracting that right type of parent who is looking for their child to receive a foundation to their education and ready to enter a parent-school partnership, not a parent-daycare partnership. Here's just an example of part of one of our resources on Montessori Thrive. For those of you who are Nido Marketing or Montessori Thrive members, you should have access to all of these materials in our collection. This is our one-pager that just explains and breaks down how Montessori is different from traditional daycares and other models. So this is our Montessori versus daycare one-pager. What is the difference? This session is also being recorded, so if you want to check this out later, or you want to take notes from it, you can always look it up on our YouTube channel. But I just wanted to include this because this is an example of, a communication form that you can include to parents in tours or on those early on meetings or open houses that really explain and break down, what sets Montessori apart or how it's different than daycare. So they can kind of, at least dip their toe into what our curriculum offers. Again, setting your tone and expectations. I put up here, believe it or not, good marketing can help, particularly content marketing. What's great about content marketing is it really doesn't cost a lot. It just takes time. But once you create those resources, you can use them year upon year. So I recommend investing some time and utilizing blog content, website content to really educate and nurture families into understanding what your mission is as a school, what your curriculum offers, and what your programs are really all about. I recommend explaining and breaking down what sets Montessori apart from other programs. So again, using those infographics, handing out those one-pagers. I also recommend touching upon the science behind the curriculum. Luckily, Montessori is, backed by scientific research. Maria Montessori was a scientist, and it's been around for over 100 years. So there's a lot backing up our approach. So I recommend just taking some time to include content relevant to that in your blogs or on your social media posts or on your website itself. And again, Montessori is not a solution to a childcare need. It's building a foundation for a strong future. I recommend putting this especially in your early childcare program information. So on your website, if you have, CASA or toddler programs, you can say, we really encourage you to drop your kids off here 5 days a week. This is a school. And they will be learning. They will not just be playing and, filling their time trying to be entertained. They will be doing productive work. And you can talk about that. Including also learning opportunities on your websites and social platforms. So this comes in the form of blogs or video content that educates families on what we do in the classroom, our curriculum, and the benefits of Montessori. Things like the fact that we have trained guides. All of this can kind of help parents get an idea of what they're going to be receiving in terms of value and curriculum. And again, Montessori is a commitment. Families are selecting schooling for their child, not childcare or daycare. So good Montessori marketing means communicating with prospective families about the value of Montessori. And we want people in our community who are looking at our programs as value and not a cost or expense. So let's dive deeper into some other strategies that you can take to help families better understand the academic and curriculum-based benefits and the lifelong, just, personality trait benefits of a Montessori child that it's really a unique product that we offer. So I want to ask before we move on if anyone has any questions so far, comments. All right. So what does parent ed and website content look like? That kind of sets those expectations early on. Again, I think try to look up different websites in your area. You can look at both like daycare websites and other Montessori websites. They don't have to be necessarily in your area, and kind of compare and contrast what's different in their content, and then focus on what you want to convey. Obviously, a daycare might be looking for a different type of parent because that's a parent who just is looking for a solution for their childcare needs, somewhere where they can drop their child off. A Montessori is looking for a parent ready for a commitment, ready to drop their child off at a school, and commit to a program that is going to be challenging and rigorous for the child they're going to be learning. So you can break this down on your website. I recommend having a why Montessori page, a what is Montessori page, blogs and articles, parenting resources. You can have a whole resource page on your navigation bar if you would like. This is great. You can include blogs, books, video links, podcast recommendations. Also, things like lead generators in the form of PDF downloads, white papers that are free that you can offer in exchange for contact information, such as a phone number or email address. So then they'll receive this resource. You'll receive their contact information and you can follow up with a personalized message. Another thing that's great is testimonials from families who found success at your school and have seen the value from a developmental standpoint and from an educational standpoint. All of this can be beneficial to include as content on your website. I recommend offering a variety of supporting information, things from, more emotional success stories of Montessori children in your community, to data studies. Some people are very logical and they want to see, what's the data behind Montessori? Are children actually being successful? And luckily for us, there are a lot of brilliant and successful Montessorians out there who are leaders at big companies, celebrities, et cetera, that we can talk about. And there's several studies to back up our approach to education. Here's just a sample of our website content for the Montessori approach. You can communicate this in various different ways on your website, but I recommend kind of breaking down in a way that's consumable to prospective families your unique approach to education, how it differs from other childcare programs, what the Montessori method is. Of course, we don't want to provide so much text that it's overwhelming for a parent. So be mindful, break things down, and use approachable language to people who might not speak Montessorian yet and not know our day-to-day vocabulary. So that's just something to keep in mind when you're creating content for prospective families. Here's a sample of our blog. I also recommend writing blogs on the materials in our classroom. So you can talk about that, things like the Pink Tower, all up until, later on where the curriculum changes a little bit more with older programs where they're doing more project-based work. You can write interesting blogs about that. But I do recommend having a blog section on your website for several reasons. Keeps your website fresh, it educates families, and it keeps family engaged as to what the value of our programs are. This is essential for parents who, aren't quite getting our curriculum, aren't quite getting what our children are taking away from Montessori. So it's just an additional platform you can use. I see here in the chat a question. Sarah's asking, has anyone created a special post or permanent link on your website showcasing the recent meta-analysis of 32 students from Lillard? Very interesting and very interested in sharing this, but want to do it in a thoughtful and impactful way? That's a great question. I do recommend sharing, articles and success stories that are out there. That's a great example of one that you can share. Has anyone done something like this on their website or through socials?
We've shared it on Facebook, but I love the idea of finding some way to really make it stand out on our website.
Absolutely. And you can always have a page where you can provide a bunch of different research studies like that, articles that are out there from reputable sources that back our approach to education. You can have that permanently on your website. I think it's a great way to, kind of ease those parents who might be, a bit anxious or curious or might not know a lot about our approach yet. All right. We will talk a little bit more about that. I have some samples actually later on in the presentation of some articles that are shared. Luckily, there's so much about Montessori out there today. And the way that people approach information now is they want to read from several sources. So it's great to offer a variety. And people like to do their research. So it's good to offer that up on your website if you're looking for, um, if parents are looking for reassurance from you. All right, so writing blogs about the Montessori curriculum. I recommend doing a couple of these because it's beneficial to just communicate to families what children are actually doing in the classroom. Put yourself in the shoes of, a parent who may not have ever experienced Montessori or is coming in for the first time and they see, broomsticks hanging on the walls and dustpans, and they see, practical life exercises and they're like, what is this? What is the value and benefit of this? Why is there a pink cube tower? What does that do? So all of these things you can kind of communicate and break down in blogs, and you can share them with families so that they understand these materials have a purpose. And of course, every classroom at every age group will have different materials for that reason. So you can include blogs and articles about this, about how Montessori children perform in traditional school settings as well. I know this is a major concern for a lot of parents who are planning to then transition to public school at a certain point is, will my child be ready for that? So you can talk about that in a blog. You can walk families through lessons that are unique to Montessori. This is a fun blog that could engage families. And then, of course, what becomes of Montessori children? I think this is one of the parents' biggest concern is, I want my child to be a good person. I want them to be prepared for the next chapter of their life. So what happens, in the future of these children? And this is where you can share social proof, you can share success stories, and you can talk about how much Montessorians have contributed to society. So parents really just ultimately want to know that their child will be successful if they invest in your programs. So your content should constantly be communicating this, because when they see the value, they're more likely to commit to your programs. So share the content and research that's already out there. This is exactly what Tina said that she's doing. Montessori has been around for over 100 years, and there's loads of studies, scientific research, and success stories out there to share. I've posted a couple here in this presentation because this is just scratching the surface. There are so many. Here from Forbes, new research highlights the long-term benefits of a Montessori education. This is a great article. It's an old article, but it's still relevant. It's written by a reputable source, and you can share this on your website. You can share this on socials. And it talks about the long-term benefits of Montessori, even if your child is just experiencing Montessori until age 6, and what happens when they experience Montessori for longer. Here's one from the BBC, which talks about, how tech geniuses, nation builders, and famous artists have praised the benefits of Montessori education, and an investigator is just exploring, does the method actually work? And it absolutely does. So I recommend this article. The New York Times and also the New Yorker have some great articles on Montessori, what people should know about Montessori preschools, and how they differ from conventional nursery schools. So these are great examples of things you can share. So along with articles and studies, I also recommend really focusing on gathering social proof and testimonials. It's worth reaching out to families consistently and creating a list of families that leave your school, but you know their child is destined for, success. They've thrived in your program, so you can keep in touch with them and ask for a testimonial of how they're doing 5 years later. All of this can really help parents understand the long-term benefits of your curriculum because we already know the long-term benefits of traditional schooling is that you get into a college, you get a job, and etc. So they know that that's something that they're familiar with, that's normalized. But Montessori is asking parents to reach out of their comfort zone a little bit and trust us, trust our scientific approach, and so offering social proof, it just gives them that extra bit of reassurance. Parents just want to see that other children um, who've attended your school have left well prepared to other programs or have been successful in the future. So I recommend focusing on gathering some testimonials focused on this. You can send out surveys regularly every year. Or you can ask parents personally. Usually, when you ask parents personally, they're more likely to actually, take the time and provide a great testimonial that you can include on your website. You can share these on social media. And I would also recommend considering doing a video testimonial if parents are comfortable, because that can be very touching. Parent education on social media. I also recommend utilizing social media as a platform. It's free to have a social media account and it's free to post on your own social media account. So this is a great way to market and communicate your message without spending a lot of money. It'll just take a little bit of time every day, or a little bit of time every week if you're posting once a week or twice a week, which is fine. Um, but I recommend utilizing it to talk about your philosophy and approach. I recommend posting about Montessori parenting, posting success stories. So anytime you get a testimonial or a student of yours gets into a great college or does something great for the community, this is a great thing you can share in your socials if the family permits. You can educate families about what goes on in the classroom. So this looks like showing them our materials, showing them what projects are happening. For those older students, like elementary age students, they're doing a lot of projects. So our middle school students. So this can be a great thing to create content for your social media because that's something that doesn't necessarily happen in a public school setting. We do a lot of work that is unique to us. Allow families to explore and see what Montessori is really about. There's a lot of misconceptions about Montessori out there that it's a free-for-all for kids. They can come into our classroom and do whatever they want. And our socials, our website, and our schools are an opportunity to educate families on the realities of the Montessori approach. And of course, you can share educational videos and graphics, which I recommend doing. Next is explaining Montessori curriculum, and this is the part that it gets a little bit complex because this is where we have to really ask parents to learn to trust us, and to do some of their own research as well, because ultimately they're going to want to when they're jumping into a method that they might not be familiar with. So how can you explain and break down the Montessori curriculum? I really recommend using a scope and sequence that can walk families through what their child will be learning at every stage. This will really put parents at ease and they can kind of get an idea of what their child should be able to do, how they should be performing at a certain age. Of course, every child is different. And just because a certain child can't read by a certain age doesn't mean they're never going to be able to read or they're missing their opportunity to. But it's great to break things down and help parents understand what they're going to be learning at every stage in your programs. Um, and of course, updating families on progress, even though Montessori schools don't necessarily offer grades, so some of you may not offer grades, but there should still be some form of progress report or observation notes that you're handing out to parents. Um, I also recommend discussing upcoming projects and challenging work that their child is going to be completing every year. This will help parents see that they are being academically challenged at your school and they're going to receive a good foundation with that. And then what is special about your programs? Do you offer anything that other schools may not? Maybe a unique music program, a language program? Do you have anything that sets your school apart? And how does that curriculum then benefit the child? So you can talk about this in your scope and sequence. I'm going to proceed with a couple of examples of scope and sequences. I recommend doing a search online. There's lots of great resources out there. Montessori Foundation has a great scope and sequence, but I do recommend taking the time to simplifying it as much as possible. What I've noticed from a lot of these scope and sequences is that some of them use really complex Montessori language, like or terminology that we're familiar with, but these parents might not be. So really try to look at it with fresh eyes and communicate the benefits of your programs and what the child will be learning in a simplified way. And I'll show you some examples here from one of our scope and sequences. Use bullet points, break things down, use charts if you can, infographics, because this will really help. This is just a couple of examples. So in our scope and sequence, we started out by breaking it down with through planes of development. We talk about that as well. What is a plane of development on our scope and sequence packet? And what the child's sensitive periods are, what they're going to be interested in, what are their characteristics and behaviors during this time, what are their needs from their environment during each stage of this. So breaking it down really helps. I see here, Jennifer, is this available on Thrive? This actually is going to be available on Thrive. This is a sample of one of the resources that we're currently working on. I wanted to include it as an example. It's very extensive and it obviously does not apply to every program because every program is different. So we're finding a way to edit it down to make it accessible for as many schools as possible. But again, this recording will be available. So if you want to reference these pages, you can always visit. These slides will be available in our collection, and so will the YouTube video on YouTube. So I recommend, again, just doing, a broad overview of what the child is going to need at each plane of development. And then we move on to, the curriculum bit by bit. So the practical life page is an example from our first plane of development. What skills are they developing? What are the lessons that are going to help them develop those skills? So we break everything down into bullet points so that parents see that, yes, some lessons include washing dishes, but this will help them develop certain skills. So all of this is, breaking it down so the parent, again, who doesn't know about Montessori can really understand why we do what we do in the classroom. This is just a sample of like a color-coded template that you can do, and this kind of shows, it breaks down program by program. This might not be relevant to your school because maybe you only offer toddler and children's house, but it might still be great to add so that a parent can see how things work out over time and over programs. Everything comes together. Everything is purposefully laid out in the Montessori space. And I also wanted to pull an example of the curriculum. This is a language curriculum page from lower elementary, upper elementary, etc. Again, lessons include, greetings and courtesy expressions. This ties into grace and courtesy. We have all of this in bullet points. We also talk about what other programs are going to be discussing. I believe this particular scope and sequence document, because it covered all the way from toddler to upper elementary, is about a 40-page document. So just to keep in mind, this is an extensive document that it's good to offer because some parents really just don't know what goes on in the classroom, and asking them to, commit to a program where they might not really understand what's going on day to day is a lot. So I recommend taking the time to put something like this together, or hopefully soon this will be available on Thrive, or also just do some research online as to what else is out there. There's a lot. Here's just another example. This ties into a music program. This was a specialized program offered by the sample school here. So again, it breaks down every lesson, what they're going to be learning. and how it works across lower elementary, upper elementary, and middle school. I think that when parents can see a scope and sequence in place, they prepare mentally for keeping their child in your programs for longer. They understand the value of your programs, and it puts parents at ease. So ultimately, what you're doing with the scope and sequence is you're answering all of the burning questions that they have about why should I leave my child in this program when public school or traditional schooling is available for them. So this is going to help answer that question. Any questions about scope and sequence? Do you utilize a scope and sequence to break down this information? Honestly, I like that template information-wise, but if I'm being honest, I think it's even better if you can add infographics and break up the content, use, charts. For instance, the planes of development, I recommend using as many infographics related to that as possible so that these parents can fully understand our approach. I see here in the chat. Okay. I'd love to know also, going back to sharing articles, do you share podcasts or articles with families at your school? Are there any that you recommend particularly to um, the rest of the school leaders attending this call? Feel free to drop that in the chat. And then have you used content marketing to show the benefits of Montessori curriculum? I'll pause to see if anyone has any questions or comments.
I have a question actually. So doing the scope and sequence, as you said, is a ton of work, and we put in that time and we put it on our website. But when, just like you said, having the infographic and having the pictures, it's a chunky, it's a lot of information, right? So having the infographic and having the pictures really helps, but it just seems so long to include. And I guess I'm just sort of wondering if there's myself or if anybody else has any experience, if we like to be as transparent as possible and have as much information as possible on our website, but maybe having, having it as a document that parents can just click on would give us a little bit more flexibility about how that's laid out. I don't know if anybody else puts it on their website or how they dealt with it or what the response has been.
This is Wally here. I just wanted to mention that in our old website, we used to have a lot of detail in terms of the contents of program and all that. And when we were redesigning the website with Nido, one of the things that was told to us that is just too much detail to kind of condense it because nobody has the time to read pages after pages of content. And so what they suggested that we do the essence of the program. This was mostly for the elementary that we're talking about. And then use it as for more, as like a PDF file they could click, go and use that. So that's how we have ended up doing that, because the fact is that parents are not going to read a lot of verbiage. Need to go through and get the essence of it and move on. So anything that you can do in terms of the attachment, they can click and go and download it or see it. That would be a lot better from the website point of view.
Thanks. I appreciate that, Wally.
Absolutely. When it comes to creating your website content, you have to edit it down and be purposeful. So I think a scope and sequence, if you're adding it to your website, should be a download, like a PDF that they download. A great thing to do is to make it into a lead generator. So you can offer a comprehensive scope and sequence PDF available on your website, and parents can download it and get it emailed automatically to them. And if it is overwhelming to put together such a long and extensive scope and sequence, and every school will have a unique scope and sequence because while our programs are, based on the Montessori method, we might have things that are unique to our school, like music programs or language programs. So something that might be worth the investment is to put together the content, but if it's the infographics that you're concerned about or the imagery, would be to, work with a graphic designer to create this one-time PDF for your school that you can use year upon year. because this is a document that can really help you convey important messages to parents about your curriculum and academics. I see here Sarah says, we have not ever shared a scope and sequence. People here have strong opinions about this because it can open up to parents thinking their child will get all of that it pertains to the age group it's associated with. We explain in broader terms. So this is interesting to me. And absolutely, I think sometimes the negative impact of having a scope and sequence is that a parent is using that as a checklist for all the things their child is completing or not completing, and every child develops differently. And Montessori is also very much based on meeting the child where they're at and challenging them, but accepting that every child is, unique. So we can also explain this in your scope and sequence and kind of add a disclaimer of sorts to communicate this message. I think it's also important to meet with parents consistently and talk about where their child is at and give them that reassurance, because that's something that in public schools, they would be getting grades, and it's very clear to see when your child is falling behind because they have a letter grade. In Montessori, we approach things differently and we meet the child based on their needs. So communicating that is also, I think, essential. Jordan here says, yes, sir, I wondered about that, how to combat parents expecting that their child will hit each benchmark, so to speak, at exactly the same time that's listed on the scope and sequence. And I recommend it. Again, this goes back to creating that content, create windows and then disclaimers of, in the Montessori classroom, our guides are trained to observe consistently and meet the child where they're at. And a lot of these big benchmarks will be discussed in parent meetings. And we will work with every family to make sure that the child is being, helped in our programs to the best of their abilities. Here I see Sarah, agreed. I'm speaking more to prospective parents. It feels strange to hand all this info when there's no context. I can see modifying for current parents more easily. And you can always opt to not have this on your website. You can hand this out to parents who are maybe in more upper programs, because usually the concerns of the scope and sequence come more when children are older, when they would be, in public school settings where, children are getting syllabuses in a public school setting, and that's not something that every Montessori school might offer. So a scope and sequence might come into play with those parents who have already been in your community for a while and they understand a little bit more about Montessori. So it's up to you to feel out the temperature in your school, what parents are saying, what are the community attitudes around offering a scope and sequence. But if it's, if you're getting a lot of questions about the curriculum being offered, I do recommend investing some time and creating a comprehensive scope and sequence for those parents who need that reassurance about what their child will be learning. Trista says, talking to potential parents, but we don't want to stick around, but we do want them to stick around start to finish, right? Absolutely. And then I see here, Sarah, great discussion point. Thanks. Absolutely. And then here, if we have all the great information, parent ed, blogs, etc., on our website and social media, thanks to Nido Marketing, what do you recommend giving potential parents as they tour the school? Traditionally, we handed out folders with printed material. Is this still valuable in our digital world? Our tours have also been nurtured via a well-crafted email campaign. So I wonder about about being redundant on the tour in the tour handout. Something you can always do is run surveys after your tour to see if the packets that you're handing out are beneficial. Not every parent will get back to you, but that will help you, I think, sense out if these things are actually useful. If it's a real pain to print things out, you can also, offer a page of resources, maybe as a resource on your website for parents who come into tour, or a PDF that you can email them. Sarah says, we do not hand out anything anymore since all the info is on our website.
We do, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Tina.
We do a little combo. So we have sort of a synthesized handout that we give just in case people want to just sit and read. It's not very large, but just like a small 2-pager. But we put the extras in there that you wouldn't get on the website. So the sort of extra step of coming and getting to know us a little bit better, like, oh, here's some more about our extracurriculars, or here's some more about our neighbors, and even our business neighbors have offered coupons and things like that for, like, oh, if you did a tour here, come and bring this coupon thing. We offer something that's for the students as well, like a little nature journal or something like that. So that's what we do at the very close, just so for us, it's more the impression of who we are. We know that they can find out all the meaty details online, but it's just a little bit sort of more personal.
I think it's great to add a personal touch at the end of a tour, because that's really, and they're probably going to learn more from coming in and asking you questions and observing, like seeing this environment and space, than they would from a packet and and your website. Something that you can also do is in the Montessori Thrive collection, we have a series called Montessori Answered One-Pagers, and they're one-page documents that answer the most frequently asked questions about Montessori. And you can have a couple of those maybe like available in your classroom. And if a parent is asking about it, you can hand out that one page, and maybe that's something that they're more likely to go back and reference, and it's something that's very short and consumable. So I think also people receive so much information from every direction nowadays. We're constantly met with advertisements and everything. So if you're addressing something that they've asked, or that you know is a frequently asked question that you experience a lot in your tours, something as simple as a one-pager can really help families. See here in the chat, Katie says, we hand out a packet that has school brochure, AMI brochure, tuition rates, and a card about how to apply with a QR code that takes you with the application to the application on our website, along with my business card. I think that's great, because that's what parents want to know, is they're going to want to follow up on what the tuition rates are, because they're going to compare. They're going to want to see how they can apply, how can they take the next steps, and then that brochure will answer any of the other program questions that they might have later on. Tina says the QR code is so smart. And you can do that for the packet as well. If you don't want to keep printing out a packet every time, as you can give a QR code that also just directs people to a PDF of, a brochure, all the documents that you would hand out, so that they can have it there open on a link on their phone easily. All right, next is parent education and curriculum-based event, helping families understand what their child is taking away from Montessori. So again, parent ed events are going to take a big part of, explaining what our curriculum is all about. And I think that also it just creates more committed parents who are in a partnership with us. So it's important to plan events throughout the year that are going to be educating families, not only on the benefits of Montessori, what they're learning in the classroom, but how they can better partner with your school by using Montessori approaches and methods in their own home. Think about what will actually allow families to see the benefits of Montessori firsthand for themselves. So things like parenting strategies or activities that children can do that are aligned with their sensitive periods, their plane of development, etc. And come up with ways to make these events accessible. We've talked about this at one of our other town halls when it came to parent involvement, but trying to think about accessibility is important, because nowadays most households have 2 working parents. So it's important to, offer things like childcare or an online version after working hours, etc. Talking about the tour, because the tour is a big part of, easing parents' nerves about our curriculum and our approach. So you want to make sure you have a well-curated school tour, that you're prepared to help them understand what they are observing in the classroom. Something that you can do on a tour is offer a tour checklist so that you make sure that you go through everything and the parent understands what they're looking at. So, you can give them a little vocab sheet of, this is the environment, this is what it means in Montessori, this is our practical life area, this is what your child will be doing, what they'll be taking away from this area, etc. Provide resources on the success of Montessori. Again, you can just talk about, there is science backing what we do, and there are a lot of there's a lot of social proof and success stories out there. Introduce the Montessori philosophy and answer any questions they might have. This is where it's great to have those one-pagers or resources ready to help them. And then in the tour, I recommend setting the expectations that it's a partnership and this is a school and not a daycare. The programs here are designed to meet the child's developmental needs, and they will be constantly learning in our environments. And then you can offer a brief material demonstration. This might be great to do when the child visit happens. So that's a later stage of the tour. Or maybe you do a child visit after the original tour, but this can be great to offer a material demonstration. Open houses. We talked about open houses briefly at our last meeting. Some schools are not having them. Some schools have multiple open houses a year, so it really depends on your model. But I think it's a great opportunity to really share with families about your successes and what your curriculum is based on. Provide value by offering an introduction to Montessori in your own community. I recommend showing how Montessori has worked with others. If you can invite student ambassadors or parent ambassadors to your open houses, this is great because those are the people who are really going to be showing parents that what you do works, and that's ultimately what they want to see. What support can a parent expect once they join your community as well? And then hand out resources that will help families understand the benefits of Montessori education. This is where you can opt to offer things like a scope and sequence, or maybe not, or you can offer, a brochure or packets. And this is a great opportunity for you to discuss more about your curriculum and programs and how they're unique to the traditional schooling system and other schools. Cora says, we actually hold group tours we call prospective parent evenings. Parents RSVP for these evenings. Parents sit through a presentation about Montessori in general, curriculum, and Montessori outcomes. They can also walk through the classrooms. That's great. And also what's great about doing the prospective parent tours as a group is that they might be asking questions that the other one hasn't thought of, and it creates discussion, so that could be beneficial. Tina says we have a similar model, but on the weekend. That's also another way to make it accessible to working parents. Great. Parenting courses. If you're a Montessori school that offers parenting courses, that's great because this is a really great way to keep parents engaged and up to date with what their child is learning, where they are, and their developmental progress. So, when you have a primary parenting class, you're talking about things like grace and courtesy. You're talking about, their sensitive periods during that time and how parents can meet the child where they are. You can also showcase your curriculum and the benefits. Answer parenting questions, provide applicable practices for children relevant in that age group, and of course, again, make those events accessible. I recommend doing that, either offering childcare options during your parenting nights or making them online or doing something to make it more accessible. Wally, do teachers participate in these prospective parent evenings or on weekends? Tina?
Yes, they do. I think for us, we have a bunch of different ways that people can come in when they're doing one-on-ones. And so then they do it during teacher contract hours. So when school is over, but they
Right.
can come in so that they can meet and talk with the teacher. It was something that we started with COVID because we sort of had to, right? We couldn't have people just coming in during the day. So, but that model really worked for us. And so we have done just 1 or 2 big tour days on the weekend, and teachers do come to that. I've changed it to from an open house model to what we just call tour day. So it's a 1 hour tour. And I
Mhm.
know that sounds like you cram in kind of a lot, but it makes everything we say and do super intentional. I only talk for about 10 minutes at the beginning about the philosophy and who we are and what we do, and then we go into the classrooms, and then we end with Q&A. And what you were saying earlier about other parents being there asking questions is super duper helpful, because some parents were like, oh, I was thinking that, but I didn't want to ask it. Or it also sparks additional questions and gets a discussion going. So ultimately, our teachers are here for really like a time commitment of an hour and a half. I ask them to come 15 minutes early, and we anticipate that there will be, some lagging questions or conversation. But I announce that that, this is sort of like, this is the end. Our teachers are going to go, but I'm still here to answer questions if you're interested. It's worked out extremely well for us.
This is Wally here. One of the issues that we have is that uh, teachers invariably feel that they're overworked.
Right.
And we do have parent nights, like a couple of parent nights during the year, in which they come in the evening. But then to ask them to come again for these prospective parent evenings seems like a thing to request these teachers to, because they're not really very receptive to coming in the evenings once they leave school.
I totally get that. And it is true. I would say teachers are overworked. Um, so we just sort of acknowledge that um, that's why I try to do the tours in contract hours. So for instance, our contract hours are from 8 to 4. So if a parent signs up for a tour with us, it's from 3:30 to 4. And again, I always make a point of sharing with both the teachers and the parents, hey, our tour is from 3:30 to 4. It's a private tour. We do have sometimes 2 people at a time, but it really is super specialized, so you can get all your questions answered. You feel like you're getting the attention that we hope you feel like you're getting the attention that you want. And it's still in a time that the teacher would be at school anyway. And then the tour day now is just once a year. It's just part of the expectation and part of the culture of our school that's when it is. But I do get that there's pushback. I think acknowledging the hard work and the time that everyone's putting into it, and also I think from our teacher's perspective, there is a big perk of being at those, which is being able to hear what parents are asking about. So for instance, Wally, if we've got someone looking at our CASA program and they're sort of teetering on that, questions about the curriculum, the teacher already knows in advance, like, okay, this is something that I want to make sure that I'm addressing with everybody in the beginning of the year straight away, so that depending on how your enrollment is, so that I already know these are questions. How can I sort of head them off at the pass and address those?
We
And
try to
I was
do
going to
this.
say
Sorry.
for us that we hold the prospective parent evenings, we actually have them scheduled out like 4 times a year. Sometimes we schedule them at 4 o'clock, and sometimes we'll schedule them at like 6 in the evening. But all of the teaching staff and us, like, we just rotate. So not everybody has to work all of them. But then I think, to kind of piggyback on what you were saying, the benefit of that also too is like you're connecting as the teacher with your prospective families.
Right.
Like some of these families will end up in your classroom and you've already made a connection with them, which is really nice.
Exactly.
And in the end, the teachers are the ones that are educated, that should be presenting the curriculum and talking about it and answering the questions. So, but I think by having it split up where we only, we kind of rotate through, so not everybody has to be at every single one, also helps minimize that extra time outside of the classroom.
I agree. We only have one classroom per every grade level that we have. So it's a little more challenging for us. If you were coming to learn more about the CASA and our CASA teacher was out on rotation, then they wouldn't have that. But I think that's a great way to do it. And I think maybe you could speak to this too, but I think there's a certain it's just a different feel when you have sort of your whole or a larger school community there to talk about the wonders of Montessori,
Yes, I agree. I think you can definitely piggyback off of your counterpartner when you're presenting and you're talking, and yes, like that's good for prospective families to see too.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Cora and Tina. I see here from Sarah, we hold tours on Wednesday mornings between 9 and 10, so prospective families can witness the students in the classroom as I talk and walk them around the hallways. Once they submit an application, they're invited back to sit in the room for 30 minutes as a quiet observer. I then debrief with them. I think this is great. And something that we offer a resource actually for this, for that observation moment, is an observation guide to help parents understand what they're observing. So something like that could be really great. But I like that model because there is nothing like seeing a Montessori classroom at work. Allison says, we hold tours in the mornings during the morning work cycle so parents can see the classrooms operating naturally. Great. And Kim says, as do we. Rachel says, we host tours twice a week. During the morning and work period, we host an open house events just 3 times a year on a Saturday. Another option you can offer as well is moving up nights. These are great for retention, but also just a great opportunity for you to showcase your curriculum, because oftentimes this is the time where we have to be communicating about our curriculum the most, is when those children are making those steps up to the final year of the 3-year cycle, or they're moving up to another level. So this is where you can really ease parents when it comes to the academics and curriculum. Invite students or parent ambassadors to these nights, absolutely, because these are the people who have experienced a transition and have been successful in doing so, and they can fill in those other parents and answer their questions better than an educator can, in the sense of they've been through what the parents are going to go through. So you can also provide families with a packet of information about what they can expect from the next chapter. You can give them a little chunk of a scope and sequence or curriculum. You can also just do a syllabus if you don't want to do a scope and sequence because you're afraid of, scaring parents with, adding those benchmarks. You can just add a syllabus about what will be covered, what will be taught during this program. What will happen if families choose to leave your community? So if they're moving to a different school, what would that transition be like? You can tell them, your children are probably going to be overprepared for public schooling. They're going to do great. This is what you can expect in the first couple of months from them. But every child is different and adapts differently. So you can explain that in the moving up night. And again, make these events accessible. So free childcare, open them up online, or do something to make them accessible for working parents. Parent observations, this is part of the tour. This is also part of, I hope, when parents are enrolled, their child is enrolled in your school, they come in for observations. This is really crucial to helping them understand the value of our curriculum. They can really see firsthand their child thrive in the classroom environment. So something you can do is offer an observation guide, as I mentioned earlier, so that parents kind of understand, about that morning working cycle. I'm sure most of the observation would either happen at either the morning working cycle or the afternoon if they're in like a full extended day program. Meet with parents before or after their visit. Usually I would say after, to update them on their child's progress, answer any questions that they might have about the curriculum, what their child is learning, where they're at, if they're having any challenges. And you can walk them through a scope and sequence or a syllabus and discuss, the developmental needs of the child. You can talk about, their plan of development, what needs to be worked on, or how you're helping the child, etc. So this one-on-one meeting after the observation can be beneficial. And then the documentation of progress. Montessorians usually keep a beautiful journal of observation notes rather than a progress report with an A, B, C, D, F. So it's important to be communicating this information back and forth to families so that they understand where their child is at. So you can highlight the school's, rigorous assessment practices. We do take notes. We do observe your child. We just don't give letter grades because we don't believe that that's how we're measuring your child's development. It's more complex for us as scientists and observers. Explain how Montessori educators meticulously document each child's progress. You can talk about this in the tour, and you can also talk about this when you meet with families after their observation on other points throughout the year. And you can show families reports and notes on their child's progression, or just walk them through, where their child is at. And just make sure there's good communication between parent and school so you can decide what will work best for your school, and how teachers also wish to communicate to the parents. Sarah says, I have to sign off. Thank you for joining us, Sarah. Preparing families for the next stage. This is similar to, to the transitioning period. So this is where a lot of the concern comes about for the Montessori curriculum. Will my child be prepared for public school? Will they be able to apply and get into good college programs? Will they be performing at a high level in other environments, such as public school? Will they socialize well and be able to get along with, non-Montessori peers, or, in the public school setting? It's crucial to reassure families they don't need to be concerned. So meet with parents who are leaving your school or considering to discuss their child's performance level in the classroom. So you can either convince them to stay on Montessori or prepare them for the next chapter so that they have a good experience and they can come back and maybe give you a testimonial on, wow, my child really, their Montessori education made them soar in a different school setting. Like they have gone above other students their age. Address their concerns privately one-on-one, or you can also host group events with parents and student ambassadors, so parents who are moving up levels can meet together, or parents entering the kindergarten year. Things like that can help. Invite parents from upper programs to help answer questions. As I said on the moving up nights, it's great to have ambassadors. Love to know what else your school does when it comes to preparing families for that next stage. So feel free to comment in the chat. And if you have any other methods and strategies that you've utilized to show families the benefits of Montessori education. I'm going to stop sharing my screen to see if there's any final discussion. Before that, I just wanted to mention that there are resources available on Thrive to help you with this. And also we have our Montessori Thrive parenting series online in February. So if you're a Montessori Thrive member, this is free for your families. We'll be meeting every Wednesday night throughout the month of February for an hour session with a Montessori expert. So we look forward to registering your families. If you have any questions about getting your family signed up, you can either check out our forum. I posted a whole forum post on our Montessori Thrive forum about it, or you can email me directly. I'll drop my email here. So you can email me if you have any questions about the parenting series. All right, I'll stop sharing my screen and see if there's any final questions before we wrap up. I don't want to keep up anyone on too late because I know you all must have busy days. A question from Elizabeth. Does anyone find their parents have FOMO regarding staying for the third year of primary? Mixed answers.
I think that maybe it depends on what is what the missing out is. If it's traditional kindergarten, I think that our families know what's special about our kindergarten year and having the third year. We do a lot of communication about the importance of the entire cycle at every level. And so most families really want and look forward to that year. We do, the teachers work with the children to complete portfolios at the end of their 3-year cycles. So those are really, really special. We do a special move up ceremony with them. It's different than graduation, but it's really beautiful.
I'm getting a lot more yeses now in the chat. Yes, especially if their child is eligible for public kindergarten. Yes, and always looking for more suggestions on how to help. Debbie, we addressed retention at last week's town hall. The recording is up. We talked all about keeping parents on for the kindergarten year because that's always a challenge. And yes, when parents have the option of, during the traditional kindergarten year at a public school, it can be tricky to find ways to get them to stay sometimes. So we covered a couple of strategies and solutions at last week's meeting. So if you go to our YouTube channel, it's up there, but it's definitely a topic that we will discuss again because it's one of the most it's one of the biggest challenges for those schools that have the CASA programs or the primary programs. Any other questions or comments before we wrap up? Next week, we have a wonderful speaker joining us, and we're going to be talking about SEL, so social emotional learning, and Montessori, how you can educate families on this, and what are the benefits of having SEL in your classroom, which I'm sure as Montessorians, most of you incorporate SEL into your curriculum. It's important. It's part of, it extends into grace and courtesy and much more. So we look forward to that meeting next week. It'll be at the same time, and you can register for free for that as well. We'll share that on our socials. I hope everyone has a great week. And if you have any other comments or if you're watching this on YouTube, you can drop your questions in the comment section there and we'll make sure they're answered. All right, everyone, take care.